Good afternoon. Welcome to today's session. This is actually the 5th academic writing class I've done on Microsoft Teams this semester. Last week, we started looking at tackling assignments, and we were looking at how to understand the requirements of an assignment. And today, I want to take you through a model process for approaching an assignment. So after we've understood what an assignment is asking us to do, we want to approach it in a way that is going to, okay, some of you will want to just pass. Some of you will want to get the highest grades possible. All of you will have a goal. My goal for you is that you actually enjoy the process of writing an assignment. And if you enjoy it, you'll also tend to get like very good grades. So I want to talk to you today about how you take a position in relation to your reading and in relation to your assignment, and how that is going to help you kind of hit the criteria for the highest grades in university assignments, where we're asking, for a sense of your answer to the question based on your analysis and critical understanding of what you've read. Now we start with a very simple diagram. Is this even a diagram? I have prepared one earlier. In fact, I've prepared two. I appreciate that some of you might be on public transport, or you might, it might not be possible for you. But if you've got a piece of paper near you, doesn't matter how big or small, could you just draw two lines like this? So I've got my two here. Two lines, like an arrow, like that. And I'm going to ask you two questions. Okay. And then I'll send you off to talk to each other, and you can relax a little bit and talk about your line. So I've drawn that line. And I'd like you to think about the line like this. If one end of the line is asleep and the other is wide awake, where are you? Okay, so you can label your line asleep, awake. And me, I'm feeling pretty good today. And even though it's been a busy day, I feel wide awake right now. I'm sure some of you will be up here. Some of you might be here. If you're asleep, you probably can't do the task. But where are you on this line? Okay. How awake are you? How alert are you? How sleepy are you? Okay. Second question I have for you for your second line is a statement. British food is good, British food is bad. And what I want to know is, like, do you agree that British food is good, or do you agree that British food is bad? You somewhere in the middle. You can just write good, bad, there. I'm going more good than bad, but then I would say that, wouldn't I? Okay, so hopefully you've got two lines. If you're not in a location where you can draw lines, just have those lines in your head. I ask you to, put yourself on a line between awake and asleep, and British food is good and British food is bad. Where are you? And now I'm going to send you to a breakout room where hopefully we don't have any zombies. And in your breakout room, I'd just like you to, if you've got, please do put cameras on, because it will make you feel more connected to one another, and it will be a more productive hour generally. But show each other your lines if you can. And first of all, explain to one another how awake you are and why. So I'm here, even though I only had 4 hours sleep last night. I've been having a good day, and maybe I drank too much coffee, so I'm still wide awake. Hi, Juliet. And then you might have more fun with the question about British food. Is it good or bad? What's your opinion on British food and why? So I'll open the rooms now and you can talk to one another. Of course, you can have a minute to introduce yourselves first and smile and be nice and be friends. Okay. And then I'll call you back in about just under 4 minutes after you've had a good chance to chat about your lines. And when you come back, we'll talk about how this relates to your assignments, because it's really, really important. You've been discussing how awake you feel and what you think about British food. Was anyone asleep?
No.
Did you have anyone sleeping in your rooms?
No.
Who's the most awake person? Is anyone more awake than me?
Anyone? Julie.
Who was that, Cynthia?
Juliet. She was the
Juliet.
one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Juliet.
So Juliet, you're the most awake person in the class, apparently.
If you say so.
Okay. I was
Except for this class because I missed the last one, so
Yeah, okay.
that's why I would say I'm completely awake.
Okay. Lovely. I was expecting a bit more energy than that, to be fair. But maybe
The weather
everyone
is
else
cold. The weather is cold.
Actually, it is.
Okay, and go on, hit me. How many people in your group were kind of here saying that British food is bad?
We didn't completely say it was bad. It was just
Okay.
saying
Okay.
it's fair.
Okay. Now, I haven't asked you these questions just because I'm interested in in your sleep habits or your food preferences. Both of these questions, I think we could represent where we are on a line, because Juliet just said we didn't say it was completely bad. We weren't right here. We were maybe here or here. Yeah. So I think this is a really important idea to bear in mind when we're answering any questions at university. It's very rare that someone at university asks you a question where you can really strongly say this or this, and often when you're an expert in a subject, do you find like sometimes the more you read, the less sure you are? Like, you can start off thinking, I know the answer to this. But the more you read and the more that you think, you kind of end up somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And I don't know, sometimes that can be frustrating. But actually, I think it's a good thing. Right? There's too many extremes in the world. It's up to us, smart people at university, mostly smart women at university, I noticed today, but it's up to us to be the balanced people and reasonable in the middle. Now, from these two questions, I want to take us to a third question on a completely different topic. Okay, and the topic is related to this. I'm going to show you a question which is really a public health question. Now, I really like public health questions because here at Hertfordshire, we have such an interesting mix of subjects that you can study. But actually, public health is a little bit of everything. There's a little bit, nursing is related to public health, but humanities are related to public health, and life and medical sciences are related to public health. If you're a computer scientist or an engineer, you may have some interest in public health issues. And in the last couple of years with the pandemic, we've all had to engage in public health conversations. So this is a public health conversation that comes up again and again, and it's about what this lady is wearing on her head. It's about cycle helmet. In this room, does anybody cycle regularly?
No.
Maha, you're a cyclist. Yeah. Do you cycle for pleasure or for commuting or both?
A bit dangerous. Like I live in the east of Asia and Philippines, so it's like a common sport here. Like if in the morning, Sunday, you will see hundreds.
Okay, okay. So you're in the Philippines, you say?
Yeah, I'm Syrian, but I work here in the Philippines.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, and did you say it can be dangerous to cycle?
Yeah, roads here are very crowded during the day. They drive like push. For me, I feel it's dangerous, but for Filipinos, they are safe with it.
Okay. 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 And everyone else in the room, if you cycle, do you wear a helmet like this lady?
Yeah.
Never.
You do?
I don't.
Hang on. Who said never?
Because in my country, the government never force us to wear the helmet when we are cycling, even the children, primary school student or secondary school student. And as long as you know the safety, you know how to cycle, you can cycle on road. So they don't force you to wear the helmet. Just depend on yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Are you in China?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of bicycles. I heard a male voice, kind of very macho voice, saying, "No, never." Was it Prince?
No, I didn't say never. I said no. I actually
Okay,
cycle, but
Yeah.
I do it for fun, and I also do it to save money on transport.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. But you don't wear a helmet.
Cycle halfway to the train station, park the cycle, then commute on the train.
Okay. But you don't wear a helmet.
I don't have one.
You
I
don't
might
have
be
one.
getting one after today. Yeah, I might be
Okay.
getting one after today.
Right. If we buy you one for Christmas, will you wear it?
That's why
Just-
I'm saying I might be getting one today.
Okay.
I'm hopeful.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I've got this question, and you'll see again we've got a line here, and on one side of the line we've got completely agree, and on the other side completely disagree. And you'll notice the question is different now. All adult cyclists should be legally obliged. So if you're a law student, it's interesting as well, should be legally obliged to wear cycle helmets. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So you've got completely agree, completely disagree. But I don't want you to put your cross on the line yet. I have another question for you. I've asked you 3 questions so far, and I think there's a really important difference between the 3 questions. And it's so important that I'm going to send you back to breakout rooms, new breakout rooms, for you to take a couple of minutes, no more, just 2 minutes together, introduce yourselves first. And what do you notice about the difference in the 3 questions I've asked you so far? Okay, I'll start the rooms now. Can you still see my slides?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So welcome back everyone. So my question was,
You are so brave.
what's the big difference between the 3 questions we've seen so far? Was there anyone in your group who said something really amazing that you'd like to share with us, or that you would like them to share with us?
Yes, in our group, we were able to analyze the 3 questions, and we said the first 2 is of personal interest. It's a little bit personalized.
Yeah.
You'll decide whether you are awake or you are asleep. You also decide whether you like British food or not. But the last question is, we said is of public interest, public opinion matters, not just your opinion this time around. And the benefit of that question put into context is for public interest as well.
Okay, great. It was of public interest. And I think you used an expression there, it's not just your opinion, right? Which I think is really important.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to, I mean, Prince has articulated that so well. Does anyone want to add anything? Beatrice?
Yeah, so in my group, we discussed that the first 2 questions were more straightforward, and it's more like a yes or no answer, and will not give you the opportunity to look at the other side. But the third question gives you the opportunity to be critical, look at the pros and cons of yeah. So like bringing that into the academic, it means that you look at the you are given the opportunity to look at both sides and maybe bring your own opinion. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I love the way you're talking about this, because you use the word opportunity there. Like, it's inviting us. It's an opportunity to explore, and I think that's what education is about. And I think you've picked up on kind of the most important aspects here. The first question I asked you was pretty much, how do you feel? Your response to the first question kind of came from your body, maybe from your mind, but you know, it's about how you feel. The second question was also kind of related to feelings, but it's largely, I mean, I used the word opinion, and your opinion about British food really depends on what you like and what you don't like. I think it also depends on your experience, because, you know, if I cooked you British food, you'd probably like it. But there are some places you go to you eat British food somewhere, you'll think, oh, this is terrible. A lot of, when you first come to the UK, your first experience of British food is usually pretty bad, unless you live in a family with someone who cares about cooking. And there are lots of us who care about cooking, but like, we don't make the food that you get in the supermarket. So it depends on your personal experience, but most importantly, it depends on kind of what you like and what you don't like. Okay, so far I think, you know, we've got a feeling, we've got an opinion, and then I think there's a danger, because I asked you, like, do you wear one of those, and you start to say, oh no, like Maha was saying, for Filipino people, maybe cycling doesn't feel dangerous, but it's dangerous to me. And I think she's in opinion territory there. Absolutely fine. I thought Prince was going to tell us that he doesn't look good with the cycle helmet, but you know, he gave us a different reason. But again, that would be a kind of opinion. But what I want to, if you take one thing away from this session, is that when you're looking at academic questions, and I think it was really good the way that you identified the academic nature of this question, that it's kind of complex, is this is not asking you for your opinion, it's asking for your position. Okay, so I like to make the distinction between an opinion and a position. I'm not going to say the famous phrase about opinions, but you can Google it. But it's like, everybody's got an opinion, whether they're smart or not, whether they've done any research or not. We might talk about opinions being equal. I'm not sure if they always are, but everyone can have an opinion on whether British food is good or bad, and no one is really right or wrong, because it's just about opinion. It's about everyone's got a different answer to the question about how tired you are, and nobody is right, nobody is wrong. Right? It's just how you feel. But with this, I said, wait, don't put yourself on this line yet, because we're not experts on this. We're not ready to answer this question, and we're not ready to put ourselves on the line. And I spoke about this a little bit last week, but one of the most common and easiest mistakes to make when you're tackling a university assignment is you pick the assignment question that you think you already know the answer to. Or you look at a question like this and you think, yeah, okay, I know the answer to that. Yeah, they should wear cycle helmets. Or no, they shouldn't wear cycle helmets. And whatever reason you've got for saying that, it's probably based on an element of opinion and personal experience, but it's probably not based on reading and thinking and consultation with experts. Okay, and I'm sure Maha and Prince are experts on lots of things, but we don't know yet if they're experts on this. So when I showed you this question, was your first reaction to start trying to answer the question? Did you start thinking about where you are on this line?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, because I encouraged you to do that with the other questions. This one, I want you to stop and wait, yeah? And what we need to do is, first of all, consider what information is out there. And if you've been in my earlier sessions, I talked about the question, who is in the room? So I used that question, who's in the room, to talk about, in academic writing and in all the things that you read for academic assignments, we can think about all of that writing and discussion as like a conversation in a room. And all the different authors on your reading list are like people in a room having a conversation, but they're the experts on the field. And first of all, we need to stop and listen to what each of them is saying about the subject before we're ready to join the conversation. A lot of people start writing their assignments too soon because they've decided on their answer too soon, but we need to do some reading first. Okay, now, let me share something with you in the chat. Okay. I sent this to you by email, but in the chat right now, there's a link to a Google document. Okay, and you'll see in the, I'll put it up here. You'll see in the Google document, we've got the lines that I showed you earlier, and then we've got this question, who is in the room? And so I've gathered together some texts about this topic, about cycle helmets and the impact that they might have on the people who wear them. So we can think about Prince cycling around without his helmet, and then we can consider whether it would be good for him to have a helmet or not. And remember, our question is not just saying, should people wear them or not? Are cycle helmets good or not? The question, remember, was, should it be a legal requirement? Should cyclists be legally obliged to wear a cycle helmet? In other words, if the police see Prince riding along without his helmet, should they stop him and say, no, 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 no. Go and get a cycle helmet and then you can ride a bike. Okay, that's the basic question. Now, in the Google document, I've got a list of the different authors that we could look at: De Jong, Dennis et al., Fihi et al., and so on. And if you follow the link to the Canvas site, you'll see on Canvas, I've got a link to all of these documents. Okay, now, what we're going to do next is a simple task where I'm trying to demonstrate to you how you could tackle an assignment like this. If you have to answer this question, we've got some text that we can read to help us answer the question, but we want to keep an open mind before we do. So we've got 3, 7, 11, it's about 16 of you. All right, and okay, I'm gonna put you into 5 groups. And in one group, I'll ask you to find the text for Dennis et al. In another, I'll ask you to find the text for Newbold and Robinson and so on. So you'll go into you'll follow the Canvas link, get the document. You'll see that in most cases, they're regular academic journal articles. But the good news is you don't need to read the whole thing. You can look at the title, you can look at the abstract, and try to look at the conclusion. And in the Google document, I've got 2 questions for you. I want you to look at your article. You can speak to each other to check that you understand it. And I want you, in your group, just write 1 sentence to express the main point that the author makes in that text. Okay. include the citation. So include the author's name and the year of publication if you can. You can send me messages during this task if you need any help, and I'll jump into your room and help. So one sentence to say what's the main point that the author makes in the article, and second sentence, how does that relate to the question of whether cycle helmets should be mandatory for adult cyclists or not? Okay. After I've sent you to the Google document, sorry, after I've sent you to your breakout rooms, in the Google document, I'll write your names and the name of an author so that you know which one to look for. Is that okay?
No, please.
Yes.
Beatrice, did you say no?
Yeah, sorry, but I didn't really get it. Sorry.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll send you into a group.
Yeah.
And when you're in the group, the other students, the three of you together can look at the instructions and explain to each other. But we're dividing up the work of an assignment, right? So you only need to look at one of the articles that I'm sharing with you. And each of the articles is about some aspect of like wearing cycle helmets and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Okay, so some of them will be about very specific aspects of it, and I just want you to work out what's the main point this article makes, which might be what I'm going to do. I will do one of these as an example, and you can see it in the Google document appearing as an example. Okay. And for any of you who can't access the Google document directly, when you're in your room, you can share your screen with each other, you can write together, you can talk together. Okay. Now, can you now all see my screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, so what I want to emphasize here about what we did. You're not all smiling, and that's not a very easy task, but you did it well. Okay, notice in each of the texts that you read them very quickly. I didn't give you time to spend. You didn't spend hours reading. You just took the main message. Your first sentence says what that main message is, and we've got to remember that these texts were not written for our assignment. Students often kind of ask this question like, yeah, what about me? Where am I in my academic writing? You know, where's my voice? Can I put myself in it? Where can I put my opinion? And remember what I said earlier. It's not about your opinion, it's about your position. So you read a text and you consider, yeah, okay, I'm taking that. If I consider this answer, if I consider this information, then it gives me this answer to the question. But of course, when we read multiple texts, we start to see different patterns emerging. So we've got, when you do this, and I recommend you do this for all of your assignments. You look at your assignment title, you start reading, and you think about, like, some people make pages and pages of notes on everything they read. You don't have to do that. You just have to keep a note of the most important points and then how those points relate to your question. So our first one, we need a reference here. I think Ryan and Amanda were doing a good job here, but we needed to add a reference. So from Dennis et al, we've got this idea. We found out that they introduced a law in Canada. They didn't have any impact on whether or not there were more or less head injuries. So, you know, that text that we read is just reporting on what happened in Canada. It's not answering our question. It's our job and our contribution to use that information to start answering the question. In the second group, you found this kind of surprising, I don't know, maybe it's surprising that the position here is, oh, you've managed to put both things into one sentence. That's pretty skillful writing. Well done. saying that the cyclists who already have kind of like risk in their cycling tend to wear helmets, and people who cycle for fun don't wear helmets, but they're not at great risk anyway. So maybe a law wouldn't make any difference to it. We wouldn't see more people survive accidents. Then we've got this wow. I don't know where this has come from, but great. We've got a point here about how actually there are kind of different types of cyclists, and having a law might create groups, people who are really serious about cycling and people who are not. We had in room 4, you found that there was evidence that wearing a cycle helmet changes our behavior because it makes us feel more confident and maybe take more risks. There was an article by Walker et al. Which did this really interesting study that said that when a cyclist wears a helmet, when cars pass the cyclist, the driver takes more risk. The driver goes closer to the cyclist. And when a driver sees a cyclist with no helmet, they tend to give them more space. So there's this relationship between wearing a helmet for protection, but also potentially increasing risk. Now, we're putting together all of these different bits of information from our reading in relation to in relation to the question. We've thought about who are the different authors that we need to consider on this. We've done our reading, we've done some writing. The next stage is to put those the information that we've got. The next step is to put it together and then to organize an assignment depending on how we put it together. So I know some of you will have other places to go, and this should only be a 1-hour session. So I'm going to speak for about another 5 to 10 minutes, and then we will look at more of this next week. And I'll also be looking in the Google document, and if I think there are any important points to make about the way that you're writing, I will make those to you either through the Google document or by emails. I might even make a video and share it around. But this issue of synthesis is when we've read maybe 10 different texts, but of course when we write an essay, we're kind of bringing all of these things together into one answer. And as I've said, we've got these 10 different things that we've read, but we have to decide on that line of agreeing or disagreeing, where is each author and where are we in relation to that author? So the first step towards going through that process is, in our reading so far, what different themes have we seen? Feel free to shout out suggestions. What themes have we discovered in our reading about this?
Helmets, wearing helmets.
Yeah, no. So around in the subject of like whether or not wearing cycle helmets should be a legal requirement. What are the different themes in that discussion? Now, for me, I've just prepared something earlier. I prepared what something we call a synthesis matrix. You see, what I've done here is I made a table, and in the left-hand side of my table, I put the issues and the themes in my reading. So I kind of put protection against injury and safety together. And I think Thompson et al. Say this about it, Dennis et al. Say this, and Robinson says this. So all I've done, like when you were reading, you wrote your sentences. And what I'm saying is that, okay, if you write those sentences using your own words and with a citation, then later you can move those sentences around into a grid like this. And we'll come back to this next week, but if you can imagine turning this table into a paragraph or even 2 paragraphs, I think what you would be able to do from this without too much extra work, you would write 1 paragraph about how a law requiring athletes to wear cycle helmet, you'd be able to write a paragraph about the relationship between that and protection against injury and the safety of the individual. And you would be doing it referring to 3 different sources. And if you get your references right, you know, I think that can be a really difficult thing to do. And if you try to write essays just holding things in your head, it's really difficult. And some of the feedback you might get from a lecturer might be, well, your writing isn't analytical enough because all you've done is say, this author says this, this author says this, this author says this. If all you do is summarize and you don't really answer the question or you don't give your own position, you're not fulfilling the requirements. Because if you write about your sources together like this, you're also showing how they are similar or different to each other. Just your position in relation. So I did this for protection against injury and safety. I make the slides available to you on Canvas, but I will also copy across my synthesis matrix into our Google document so you could have a look at it. I've got 3 different authors who talk about risk. So here are my kind of 3 sentences about risk. And I think I could put those together into a section about risk. And you can see, can't you, how my essay could start to look quite good here. Because in my introduction, I'll be able to say, we need to consider the aspects of safety, risk, and public health issues. And I've already done my writing, roughly. I'm going to turn this into a paragraph. I'll turn this into a paragraph or 2. I've got 2 sources that talk about public health issues. And I thought there was one more issue, which was a couple of the articles say, you know, this is a really complex and complex issue, and it's really hard to say, agree or disagree because it's complex. So I think I could write an essay saying, like, there are 4 themes. And from my table, here's my first section, here's my second section, here's my third, here's my 4. And if I've done the reading and the thinking and putting things together in a table, I think I can write this quite quickly. If I start with a blank piece of paper, it's going to take me hours and hours and hours. And at the end of my writing, I won't feel very satisfied with what I've done. Okay. So the focus today was about taking a position, showing your position, not an opinion, not a feeling, but saying where you are on a line in relation to all the other reading you've done. And I think we could end up with something like this. We started off with our line, agree and disagree. And I think, well, if I think about my reading in relation to protection against injuries, it makes me agree. If I think about safety, maybe not so much. If I think about risk, I'm starting to disagree. If I think about the bigger public health, it's even kind of the stronger reasons to disagree. But if I think about the complexity of the whole thing, it kind of puts me back into the middle. So when I read these different articles, I've done my research and I've read the experts, you know, at the beginning of the lesson, I told you, don't answer this question until you've done the reading. for me, when I do the reading, I'm kind of here in the middle, but maybe closer to disagree than agree. But before I did the reading, I was probably agree, because it felt like, yeah, obviously it's good to protect yourself. Do any of you in the room kind of feel the same way as me? Did you go on the same kind of journey? Harry's nodding.
Yeah.
You start by thinking, yeah, my feeling tells me this.
Yeah, at the beginning, my feeling was all about, I thought about safety.
Yeah.
I never thought about other stuffs, but when you explained that, my opinion is a little bit changed.
Yeah. And remember, are you going to use the word opinion?
Oh, no. No, opinion is subjective, up to be like objective. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It's your position, right? It's your position. In relation to all of this stuff that you've read about, and you've thought about it intelligently. Yeah. And we'll come back to this next week. Next week we'll look at kind of how we might organize our assignments. But my red arrows here are kind of, I think if I wrote an essay on this now, I'd probably start by talking about protection against injuries. And then I'd move on to safety, then I'd move on to risk, and then I'd move on to public health, and then I'd end at complexity. Why do you think I end on complexity? Sorry, Jitka.
So it's right in the middle.
Okay, and what else is in the middle?
Contrast, it's the you are in the middle.
And I am in the middle, yeah. So whatever my position is, my writing is going to end by showing the reader how I've come to that position. And I don't do that by saying I think this, or in my opinion I feel this. I do it by showing what the different authors have said, and I think that leads us logically to say, so therefore there are all of these factors, and it's very difficult to strongly agree or strongly disagree.
Do you do that in the conclusion?
Yeah, we'll come back to this next week, but I'd also do it in the introduction too.
Well, the thing is, is to illustrate like that one, or to display like that one is going to be easy, but to write them in appropriate way is quite hard, particularly for the reader. That's the thing that it comes in my mind, how I'm going to organize them that in a written.
Yeah, sure. You know what was the key? I think is that question there. Obviously, the first key was to read and to get an understanding from the reading, and to try to keep an open mind. But in terms of turning your reading into a good piece of writing, you've got to notice the themes and kind of narrow them down to like 3, 4, maybe 5. Give them clear labels. So I think when I had clear labels like protection against injury, safety, risk, public health issues, I can then go back to my reading and just kind of move things around. So, okay, this is what this author said about this, and this is what this author said about that. But remember that the texts that you've read are academic texts. So you showing your understanding of those academic texts, that's going to be good. It's not going to be, we're students. It's not going to be perfect. There are going to be some things we get wrong with language. Sometimes we'll be a little too imprecise. Okay, but it's okay. You can write really good essays without them being perfect. If I see a really perfect essay, I might be suspicious. It's a journey, and this is only November. So, when you get to the end of your program, you'll be a much more expert writer. But in your first couple of assignments, if you're following this kind of process, and your structure is good and your answer is clear and you've done the work honestly, I promise you'll be absolutely fine. and it won't be perfect, but we're never going to be perfect, but we are going to improve step by step. Sorry, Prince, I interrupted you.
Yes. So from my point of agreeing to my point of disagreeing, I've got against injury, safety. Do I still need to look for articles that support what the author is saying about safety, what they're saying about injury, what they're saying about risk and all that?
So what I've tried to show you today is, do you know, remember when I first showed you this question?
Yes.
Like, for me, the worst thing you can do is to decide what your answer is at this point, and then try to find support for your answer in your reading. Okay? In my opinion, or my position, that's the opposite of education. That you know, a lot of you are getting into debt. You're paying a lot of money for this university education, and it's going to pay you back later in life, financially, culturally, spiritually, hopefully with happiness too, right? But you haven't made this investment just so that you can tell us what you already think. You know, leave that for the people who go to the University of Facebook. Oh, I've done my research. I looked on Facebook. No. We're university students. We've got access to a library. We've got great opportunities here. So what I want you always to do is think of this question and think, okay, it's a really interesting question. Let me start my reading. I'll start my reading with the reading list from my lecturer, because they gave it to me for a reason. Go back to the lecture on this topic. Start with a reading list there. Explore further. We've got different sessions to show you how to do that. The Library Skill Up page shows you how to do that as well. You do your exploration, your reading. It could be 10 sources, it could be 20, it could be more. But everything you read, try to kind of keep a bit of balance and open mind and think about, okay, so how does this relate to the other things that I've read? If you've got one text that's, well, this is about safety and this is about risk, they're actually on different topics, but if I consider each angle, it actually changes my perspective on the question a little bit. I've got this other one about public health. Oh, that changes my perspective a lot. So when I first saw this topic, I really had never thought about the kind of psychology of it all before. And it never occurred to me that we take more risks when we feel safe, which is a crazy paradox. But it's, if you think about it, yeah, it can be true. But that's why we read. That's why we think. That's why we have conversations with each other. And then, yeah, your position on the line should change as you're reading. If you read 20 texts and you find that your position hasn't changed 1 millimeter, then I would say there's something wrong with the way that you're reading. And it's probably that you're reading looking for support for what you already think. Try not to do that. That's what they do in the University of Facebook, right? Was that okay as an answer, Prince?
Yeah, but not actually direct to what I'm perceiving. Yeah, because I'm trying to justify what this author said by on safety. On going by our diagram, at the extreme is agreeing, the other extreme is disagreeing.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to justify what this author is saying on safety, and I'm saying, do I need get a supporting document, a supporting author to say, oh, this author supports
I got you. Okay. I mean, good. It's a good question, right? But when you're reading about a particular topic, go back to that idea of like who's in the room, like who are the big names in the field. Like one of the articles was by De Jong, But one of the other articles, I think it was Newbold, maybe, starts by just talking about de Jong. And that kind of tells you, oh, look, de Jong is quite important in this field. So if you pick up an article and it's about, it's mostly about safety, but you think, I'm not sure that I'm convinced by this, or, this is quite limited. This is just like one study in, one of these articles was just one study in Canada. One of the articles is a study that just used like one cyclist and followed them. So you might look at that article and think, okay, but I want to do more reading on this topic before I really know how to accept or reject what I've read here. So I think it's a really good question, Prince. And yeah, what you will sometimes have to do is, okay, I've read one article, but I'm still not sure. So I'm going to read a bit more on that so that I can make my mind up about what this author is saying. And that goes back to that idea of academic writing being like a discussion, being like a conversation. You want to hear what this person says in the conversation, but then you listen to these people over here to help you to evaluate what the first speaker has said. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you very much.
Right. And of course, what we need to do over the next weeks and months is kind of put this into practice with our own assignments. Because of course, I can't do all of your assignments together with you at the same time. I can show you one example, but what I'd like you to take away is the kind of process. Apply it to your own assignments, and you can always talk to me about how that goes. So if you've got an assignment that you're working on that you'd like to send me an email and tell me a little bit about before next Thursday, I can try to incorporate it into next Thursday's class. Okay. But if you'd like to see an example of some really nice academic writing, this whole class is a kind of cheat, really, because it's all inspired by this one article from the British Medical Journal in 2013. It's written by Ben Goldacre and David Spiegelhalter, and I really like the way that Ben Goldacre writes, because I think he's a really successful communicator with his writing. And he used to write for newspapers and blogs, but he was also a doctor, a GP, and he writes quite popular books about things like science and the medical industry. He wrote a really good book called Bad Science, where he kind of exposes people who claim to be scientists when they're not. And he wrote a really interesting book called Bad Pharma, which is about the pharmacological industry and pharmaceutical industry and maybe some of the bad things that they do. But he wrote this article. It's only 2 pages, and it takes all of these sources that we've been looking at and it brings them together, and you'll recognize it. And he works through the themes and comes to this kind of conclusion that it's really complex. We can't say for sure either way, but I will now add this a link to this article to the Google document and to the Canvas page. So if you're interested, you could have a look at it yourself. But I think it's a really nice piece of writing. Okay, I know lots of you have to go. I have to go as well. As I said, next week we will look at organizing your writing, and I will try to make it relevant to your specific assignments. So if you've got anything that you're working on, let me know. If you don't share it with me, I can't respond to it. Okay. And as usual, any questions, any feedback you want to give, you can email me directly on that address. Okay.
Thank you.
And Beatrice, you said you were tired, but you haven't fallen asleep, I think.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, bye.
Okay.
You didn't fall asleep because you didn't have much sleep.
If you're still around and want some homework, your homework could be to try to find some British food that changes your mind.
I don't think it's possible.
Okay, good to see you all.
See you next
Take care.
time. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. See you.